Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Flatzoid, Arwin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Привет. Morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Any evidence of a physical, geometric sphere-edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Not
No
since
evidence.
the Black Swan. Yeah, not since the Black Swan. Well said. And before.
Yeah. Just imagination.
Any evidence of
It's-
axial rotation?
Nope.
You first need a radius before you can have the actual rotation of a sphere.
Well, if there was axial rotation, then we would notice that. But we don't. There's no Earth-based Coriolis.
Yeah.
Reference frame ruined.
We don't drift away. I don't jump 460 meters away.
There's no reference frames, but at the same time, there's infinite reference frames. It's all a matter of perspective.
It's context.
Whether you're going to perceive things from a mind experimental point of view or there really is. So either you have infinite reference frames or you have no reference frames. But they don't like to pick.
Well, even
They
if you
try to keep it in quantum flux, they just want it all at the same time and none of it at the same time.
even if you have infinite reference frames for a couple, let's say, you still need to use it in the context of what you're trying to prove and say. For example, the Coriolis effect, as Nathan describes, would be observed if you were on the roundabout, and then something that hovers above the roundabout, say a drone. Well, there's two reference frames right there. But they're saying that applies to Earth, except it's never seen or proved.
Infinite ruined reference frames.
Ah, there you go. I like that.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core?
Nope.
Nope.
And it seems like every time it is addressed in some way, it always leads to absolute catastrophe. Isn't that just special?
The
In
evidence
movies?
of the distance to the sun?
Nope. I don't think there is a distance to the sun.
How can you measure a distance to an intangible object?
Excellent question. You can't. That goes for
You
both
could have
sides.
an apparent distance, though.
Yeah, you can have an apparent size. Yeah. Not actual, you mean?
Yes.
That's nice. And
So
not actual
within
size.
the holographic perceival of it, you could have a virtual distance. It just wouldn't really work out when you then try to use that as a triangulation method in the physical world. That's a problem.
Yeah, both sides of the argument do it, though, don't they? They both think they can triangulate this intangible object. Hey, Chocolate.
Yep.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, gravity, oh, gravity.
Don't be shy in Discord. Any scientific evidence of gravity emerged over the weekend, perhaps?
I think the history of gravity is
That I know
already
of.
kind of amusing on its own, wouldn't you say? They thought they had something, then everybody believed it, and then they retracted from that belief further through conceptual mechanics, thanks to Einstein, and it only made people believe even more in it.
How can you
Stuff we ain't got
scientifically
shit.
validate time?
Hold on. We've got Rams and Ryan trying to get a word in. Go on, Rams, first.
I was just agreeing that there's no evidence. That's all.
Ryan?
Same here. I was just saying they ain't got shit.
So how would you validate that time is an actual
It isn't.
entity? Yeah,
It
it's just a
isn't.
concept. That's what I'm saying.
You can't.
So if their gravity is based on time, then how will they have scientific evidence for it?
They won't. But to answer your first question more accurately, you said, how will they? Well, they'll do it by way of this fallacy called reification, taking that which is abstract and non-concrete and making it physical and real. So that's called the fallacy of misplaced concretedness, or reification. So they will reify this abstract conceptual entity into physical actuality. So time, a concept, becomes space-time, and you can bend it, and no, it's just conceptual. It's not real. That's why they say things like gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. Well, that's conceptualization. And the method of taking the conceptual into the actual is reification. The gravity is a reification.
Yeah, just a bunch of doublespeak.
But they'll call us unscientific and anti-intellectual for taking that position.
Indeed.
The position of reality.
Yeah. They want acceptance of their just so stories. They want you to think of it as a force, because thinking about things makes them real. Now, in the realm of magic, that's true. You know, a lot of people think they're actually stood on a model, a sphere-shaped model. Another reification. Because they're thinking about standing on a sphere. That's all they're doing. Does that mean you are? No. Earth is obviously and observably flat. But thinking about standing on a sphere makes it a lot of people's reality in their mind. Conceptually a sphere, but they think it's really a sphere. It isn't. That's merely a reification fallacy.
It's
Guys,
reified
we
through
all
culture
know
as well,
George
through
Mooser.
television and movies.
Yeah, exactly right.
George Mooser gave us all the permission, and he told us, stated it very bluntly. We can, we do, we must consider Newtonian gravity as a force. It doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't necessarily have to work at the really is level. Thanks, George.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Not yet.
Look at that stuff. No. Yeah. No.
No? Discord? Anybody? Anything been offered up as scientific?
No,
That's a big negative.
Silent as the void of outer space.
So, over the weekend, I had Dr. John D call me up, and he went over a quasi-experiment. I'm not going to detail it in case I spoil the video he's making, which I'm assuming he is. But he took me through this claim that was being made about polarization. And at the end of it, his conclusion was that it was a just so story not based on science. And he just wanted me to just say, yeah, that's absolutely the case. You've obviously figured it out, and you're telling me that it's not based on science. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because he was absolutely aghast at this particular bit of information. And I'm like, yeah, do you not remember QE going through the I can't remember which magazine it came from, but pointing out that sort of 99% of all of these studies are non-scientific. None of them, very rarely, have ever been through the scientific method. So when you hear that, you might just write that off as like, nah, it's just words, right? Doesn't mean it. It's just statistics. What is it? 34.2% of all statistics are made up on the spot. So based on that, you could just write it off as not being that relevant until you start pulling stuff that you think your reality's based on out of the studies and actually having a little look. You quickly realise they've just made up a little story, or in this instance, they back-engineered the effect and then engineered in their story to explain it. Well, that's not scientific validity, but a lot of what we think is real is based on this abject nonsense. And it really brought a smile to my face because my wife was sitting listening to this conversation with, someone far more educated than I, a PhD, is having a conversation with me in absolute shock because he can't quite believe that all of this stuff that is just out there, like it's absolute matter of fact. And I rounded out the conversation by pointing out something that was discussed on a show we have in Britain called Quite Interesting, or QI. And on QI, they described the half-life of facts. And he explained with an example of the moons. He asked the question, how many moons has Earth got in orbit? There's a begging the question fallacy we won't get into. But the panels asked how many orbits, how many moons, and they said something like 12 or 11 or something like that. And back in Series 3, that was a right answer. It got some on points. Now, you fast forward 10 years later, and they're assessing it based on this half-life of facts, and saying that now, NASA say there's 2,000 million, whatever number, massive number of moons that are in orbit around Earth, in this presupposition that things fall around rocks in a sky vacuum. So he was saying that based on that, obviously that fact that got some on point back in the day has now deteriorated into a non-fact. In other words, it's just not true, right? It's just a made-up story that someone gave you based on some maths or something that they thought, and then that's your reality, right? But saying that facts have got a half-life, you might as well say most of what you hear isn't true, even if it's seemingly backed by what seems like evidence. There's a good chance that somewhere down the road it'll be proven wrong. And when we get told science doesn't prove anything, that's the line they use. Even though the method that's very rarely employed, 99.9% of these scientific, in quote, studies, haven't adhered to the scientific method. So science, empirical, what we actually have in our life, just those stories made up and probably going to be proven to be wrong in a not too distant future. Half-life of facts, look it up. Very interesting stuff. Anyone want to add anything before I move on to gas pressure?
Yes. I want to add on to that my Just So stories have a lot better half-life than the regular Just So stories.
What does half-life tell you? It's dying. It's a fact that's on its way to death.
But mine will take a lot longer because I just thought them out a lot better.
Your Just So stories will have longevity, but still eventually die.
Well, once I stop continuating them and expanding them, once I'm dead eventually, it'll stop unless somebody's like so inspired that they're going to take over that role. But
I see what you're doing. I've just figured out Arwin's smarter than I give him credit for sometimes. Okay, I see what you're doing. Yeah, that's exactly right, Arwin. So long as you're telling the story often and perpetuating your Just So story, it remains a current, active, let's call it a fact. It may have a half-life, but so long as it's being perpetuated continually, like globes in every movie, in every intro and referenced in the language, then that idea with a half-life is currently true, right? Doesn't mean it's actually true, but it's, it's currently being propped up and talked about a lot, therefore true, till it's not.
Well, I could, but it doesn't mean that I would. Because I'll just say, no, this is just the most logically consistent. And that will be correct. And that's not going to be incorrect. It's just that the interest in the conceptualization itself will drop over time as more people figure out that it is just a conceptualization and they learn how to deal with it, where before it was kind of occultly integrated with us.
Again, nice parallel. Arwen's on fire. So yes, in other words, if you've got a globe belief and it's currently being perpetuated continually, you're not necessarily even going to consider the idea that it could be a conceptualization in a sphere-shaped earth beneath your feet based on a philosophy you've reified. You wouldn't even consider that Now, eventually, it might reach the point that somebody points out that you're just holding on to a philosophy and it's not actually the world you live in. And it may take some time, with all the propaganda of this myth that Arwen's come up with in terms of his story, to actually be appreciated as a conceptualization. In the meantime, it's your world. It's your reality. Until proven otherwise. Which eventually it will. It's got a half-life.
Until loud enough, big enough, long enough.
Who's that? Goering? Was that Goering? Or was it Hitler himself?
Goebbels.
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 Propaganda minister. Yeah, that makes sense.
Nathan, on this issue, if it's cause and effect, which the scientific method definitely is a way of or means of finding the cause to an effect. Take, for example, water boiling at sea level. Is that ever going to have a half-life?
No. That's why it's got the word empirical within the description of the method. At the end of any experiment, even if you don't guess correctly what caused the effect, you would empirically validate your null. In other words, a hypothesis has two sides. One is to say, if I'm right, this effect I observed at the first stage of the method will be demonstrated when I manipulate what I think causes it. But you've also got another side to the hypothesis, which is called the null, which is the antithesis of that exact statement. If I vary what I think caused the effect I observed at the first step of the method, then it won't cause the effect. Well, if you vary it and it doesn't cause the effect, you've validated, proven your null. So therefore, you've empirically validated it. With water boiling, is that going to be a changeable fact ever? No. Absolutely easily verifiable scientifically. Water boils at 100 degrees C at sea level. Add heat, that's the cause. Get the effect, the water boils. That's never going to change. It's empirically validated. That's the beauty of science, right? The cause and effect has been established. The cause isn't suddenly going to change.
Don't you just love entropy?
What, entropy of half-life facts? Facts shouldn't have a half-life. They shouldn't be subject to entropy.
Everything is subject to entropy, Nathan.
Nah, ideas aren't. You know, you're only talking about stuff that's occurring in the physical and natural world in terms of your descriptions in natural law. So you're talking about the physical. You could call it physics if you like. It's probably detailed in physics. So, yeah, that's the physical. But an idea, a description of something, well, that's kind of going against my own narrative here. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with QI, because a fact is a fact. If it's a fact, it's unchanging. Shouldn't be subject to a half-life. Shouldn't suffer the effect of entropy increase. You know, the water boiling at 100 degrees at sea level, that's not going to have a half-life, right? It's as true today as it was yesterday. It's never going to be not true tomorrow. That is not a fact with a half-life. It's an empirically valid statement.
Yeah, if it's fact, it will always be a fact.
Speaking of
That
entropy,
would mean it's impossible to prove otherwise, right?
yeah, exactly. If you've reached the point where you've validated your presumed cause and effect, part of the experiment states that it's subject to systematic experimentation. That would be to say that you don't just have someone go, look, I've varied this presumed cause and I've caused this effect, therefore it is correct. There might be some flaw in his apparatus. So you have other people replicate it, perform the same experiment, and validate the result. And when it's been validated again and again and again and again and again and again and again, you can then say it's not like it's going to statistically change. We've got the validated cause of the effect. Never to be altered, never to be proven wrong. Because if it was proven wrong, you'd have validated your null. That would be to say that you did the experiment, varied the thing you think caused the effect, and it didn't cause the effect. But then you'd be validating the null hypothesis and not the alternative. And at that point, you've invalidated the presumed cause. So it would violate the law of identity if somebody says, well, once something's empirically validated with science, it could be proven wrong. Well, no, because you can't be A and not A at the same time. You can't have your presumed cause causing the effect That's alternative hypothesis validation. And not causing the effect, null hypothesis validation, it violates the law of identity. You can't be A and not A at the same time. You can't be the cause and not the cause at the same time.
Hey.
Any evidence that we can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon? Talking of entropy.
That's a negative.
No.
Nothing can overcome entropy, can it?
Discord? Anybody?
Nothing.
Got nothing. Fair enough. Shout out to Al Junkie for the super chat. The globe is bedtime story. See the rest of that. It's got a sheen on the screen. I'll read the rest of it when it goes past, or I'll refresh through the screen. Thank you very much for the super chat, Al Junkie. Really appreciate it. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Negative.
That they've calculated it, but that's about all. And calculated it using a whole bunch of preconceptions and presumptions.
It's a fairy tale. I love it. Great. I'm glad I brought up the other screen to read that. The globe is a bedtime story. A fairy tale. Very good.
How do you measure radius?
Well, a lot of people are so much.
Seeing optical effects.
Sorry, a lot of people are a lot more comfortable with an explanation than with, well, sorry, we don't know.
Yeah, that's not good enough for most people. Well, that sends people on one of two paths that I've described many times. Either the, wow! You mean I don't know why the sky's blue? I know, they've got an explanation, but that could be wrong. More likely than not, given that they don't know the distance to the sun. That's amazing. Maybe I'll be the one to find out. Wow, that's really cool. Or the, what do you mean we don't know? Well, you better tell me.
You don't have an answer, so mine's right.
It's funny, right? How some
Yeah,
people will
that's
take
right.
an explanation, no matter how bad it is, as a nice warm blanket, which makes them feel better and they can go to sleep at night, even if they know it's wrong or it makes no sense. But they have an explanation. Somebody gave them a story, and they can accept that story as their reality, and they can feel good at night when they go to sleep. Like a warm blankie.
Like a security blanket.
Yeah. Like Linus and his blue blanket. Yeah.
Yeah, but chocolate. The Black Swan took that blanket away because their calculation for the R is 3959, and the geometric horizon at the 1 foot observer height has to be at 1.22 miles. And so since the Black Swan came out, that blanket got ripped out of their hands. They can't go to bed so easily anymore.
That's why I love this diffraction.
They got an imaginary blanket.
But the boats, man. You can just hang on to the boats. Look, everybody's still talking about boats going over the curves. Just hold on to that.
Chocolate, why do you think they're hammering on us that we don't understand diffraction these days? Because they know diffraction is the end point of everything.
Oh, you mean they're talking about perspective, which they used to tell us that we made up in order to explain why we're seeing things we shouldn't be seeing in their fake model. But in reality, we're actually seeing these things, and they tell us, oh, you guys just make up things like perspective. That's cute.
Yeah, and then you get conspiracy cats that saying we're wrong with diffraction, and he puts up the Rayleigh criterion that actually says it exactly what we're saying.
Well, now they've accepted that there is a resolution limit based on the aperture of a camera, and that's how photographs are produced, or anything you see, or anything you look at, because everything's travelling through an aperture, then that's definitely going to be a limitation of things that we see, right? Well, then they're going to need to explain why that aspect of things we see and its limitations, detailed in the Rayleigh criterion, are not accounted for in Earth curve geometry when it's compared to pictures. So we definitely have this optical limitation, and the calculator's geometric. Well, I know why. It's because they've taken the effects of perspective and called a non-physical diffraction point that moves with the weather, that would be the horizon, and called it Earth curve, a physical obstruction based on a sphere getting in the way of things in the distance. Even though it's a non-physical location they're told we can't measure, can't see, and only exists in maths, it's being compared to optical images that have got diffraction limits. Now, I've pointed this out to Conspiracy Cats. He's questioned me about diffraction. Now, given that in my video explaining that, in long format, it was about a 10-minute video, with me detailing it. I can't remember who encouraged me to trim it out, but I did. I trimmed it out, even addressed it to Conspiracy Cats. Now, he's responded to me. He's got in touch with me on Skype. Now, what he's got in touch with me isn't about why the curve calculator has hijacked the effects of the diffraction limit and perspective and called it Earth curve. He's contacted me because a few, I don't know if it's years or months, but a considerable time ago, Anthony Riley said about gravity, in response to George Moose's claim that gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force, he juxtaposed that with Conspiracy Cats, a teacher, and said Conspiracy Cats is not a paedophile, but you can think of him as a paedophile. Now, that's a juxtaposition between somebody who's not something being something you can think of them, because you can think of anybody as anything you like. No one can control your thoughts, is the point. You can think of gravity as being a force if you want. I can't stop that. Your beliefs are your own. Your thoughts, your feelings, they're yours. But that was what Conspiracy Cats got in touch with me about. He sent me a screenshot of Anthony talking about young pussies. In reference to Conspiracy Cats, he's got cats in his name. And Anthony's referring to this in a hinty, derogatory way. That's what Conspiracy Cats got in touch with me about. Now, number one, I think he's protesting too much about this. It's been a long time, and it's still obviously got under his skin. Why, I don't know, but let's just move on from that. Why he's protesting so much about this, I don't get that particularly. But moreover, why is that the thing he brings up? Some nonsense from Anthony that he screen capped from a completely random Skype message. That's what he's got in touch with me personally about. Not about diffraction limits, the thing he's asked me about. Not about my explanation of the Rayleigh criterion not being accounted for in Earth curve mathematics and being hijacked. None of the actual debating subjects that are being debated about were what Conspiracy Cats has personally contacted me proactively about. It's about this quote from Anthony, Conspiracy Cats is not a paedophile, but you can think of him as a paedophile. That's what he's got in touch with me about. I am not even joking.
Wow.
But what has that got to do with you anyway?
Nothing. We're supposed to be in a back and forth about the hijacking of perspective and calling a physical geometric sphere edge the horizon, when it's a non-physical location that can't be derived or measured. That's the argument we're having here on Flat Earth Debate. Conspiracy Cats has got some issue with Anthony juxtaposing an example from Musa where you can think of something that's not something as something it is in reality when it isn't. Yeah, non-related subject. Moreover, a personal thing to him, between him and Anthony. Something he's taking personally, even though that in and of itself is a debating point. He's saying, I object to you saying you can think of me in this way. Well, we object to a non-force being thought of as a force. That's the point. But he's not harping on about the gravity juxtaposition, just the fact that he doesn't like people think of him in that way. Now, if he didn't labour that point and go on about it all the bloody time, maybe people wouldn't think of him in any way that's derogatory when he's not something derogatory, or think of gravity as a force when it's not a force, or address the issue of diffraction he's brought up. Where is it? Why is it that this limit, optical limit, obviously in effect in a photograph, why is it this optical limit is completely ignored and called Earth curve in their mathematics of geometry, which does not account for optics? It can't. It's got actual sizes that don't change with distance. Another point I've raised that Conspiracy Cats is not addressing. Your sizes in the Earth calculator remain the same at any distance. A 10-foot wall is the same at any distance. That means it's not subject to angular limitations and diffraction. Now, I want that addressing, not Conspiracy Cats is not a pedo, but you can think of him as a pedo, some ongoing issue he's got personally with Anthony, juxtaposing gravity in a different argument. Address the diffraction limit. You've brought it up, you clown. Also, he's blocked me. Comes here leaving comments on the channel in the chat, and for about 10 straight minutes I'm replying to him in the comments, going, why isn't he actually acknowledging a word I said? He's got thick skin, my God. And then it suddenly occurred to me, based on what Sean Hawkins did, if they block you, so I go and leave a comment on Conspiracy Cats, he blocks me on his channel. He can still come to my channel and leave comments, but he can't see me. So it's not that he's ignoring me, he just can't see me. So I signed in under the Flat Earth Debate account and started debating with him. But why should I have to do that? Why would you be so cowardly as to say, I don't want to have any involvement with this person and block them? I don't actually block anybody. But if I did, the last thing I'd want to do is go to their channel and leave comments. Isn't that the point of blocking them? That you don't want anything to do with them? So Conspiracy Cats go, I don't want anything to do with Nathan. Okay, I'll block him. But I'll go to his channel and spam comments. Just like, what the hell are these people on? Just address diffraction, cats. The hijacking of it and calling it Earth curve in your maths by way of actual sizes that don't change with distance. Maybe address that, rather than you're worrying about how Anthony's describing you with a juxtaposition about gravity and you not being a paedophile. Because I don't care about that. I care about your Earth curve maths calling a physical horizon. That's what I care about.
Yeah, it sounds like he blocked you because he was a scaredy cat.
Absolutely.
But he still wants to be around you. Right?
Yeah.
But just don't touch him because he'll bolt away like a scaredy cat. And just leave a turd somewhere on the carpet.
So wait, so let me get this straight. You address Simon Dan about his reference frames, and he in turn references Conspiracy Cats with his diffraction nonsense, right? Now you address Conspiracy Cats with his diffraction nonsense, and he directly references some other bullshit that's got nothing to do with that.
That's correct.
So they're just playing like leapfrog with the arguments.
That's correct.
Instead of actually addressing them. That's nice.
So what we'd actually like, because we seem to have a list of these people. We've got Thunderfoot Clown, that's yet to address his incorrect assertion that gas behaves like solid bondy bouncy balls and goes down, go boom boom when poured into a fish tank, unlike gas particles which expand in all directions. That's not been addressed. Shout out to Samson for the super chat. I really appreciate it. We've also got Simon Dan. Correct, Chocolate. Simon Dan. Whose reference frames have been ruined? Response, you don't know what diffraction is. All right. What about the reference frames you've ruined? So he's not responding to that. Still yet to respond to it. It's been a very long, over a year period of time. So let's have that addressed, Simon Dan. Whose reference frames have been ruined? What reference frames? Because we on the Flat Earth side don't have any. We already know it's your reference frames that have been ruined because we don't see 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath stuff to cause it to seem to drift away from us. That would be it moving apart as we turn underneath, as is claimed, and does not happen. So your reference frames have been ruined, Dan. You're just not addressing it. You've moved the buck to Conspiracy Cats about diffraction, something that has been hijacked and called Earth curve by way of a physical obstruction at the horizon we do not have. So, Cats comes along and starts asking me about diffraction. No worries. Yeah, diffraction has been hijacked. It's being called Earth curve. So, what's Conspiracy Cat's going to do? Well, he's going to talk about Conspiracy Cats being a pedo, but not being a pedo, because you can think of it as a pedo, like gravity not being a force, but you can think of it as a force, even though it's not a force, it's conceptual. That's what he wants to talk about. What about diffraction, Cats? What about reference frames, Dan? What about gas go down, go boom boom, Thunderfoot? Why is it that none of these clowns can actually back the stuff they lay on the table? Cowards, the lot of you. Pathetic. You got to obfuscate and dodge when we actually repeat your question back to us. So we're pointing out that you're asking about diffraction. Okay. Yeah, diffraction. Let's talk about diffraction then. What's that? You don't want to talk about diffraction. You want to move on to an argument with gravity that you're having with Anthony. Why not talk about diffraction and its lack in the curve maths? What about those actual sizes that don't change with distance? Something that's very dependent on diffraction limits. Oh, you don't want to talk about that? Just want to talk about Anthony. Oh, right, I see. That's familiar. Simon Dan, you and your reference frames have been ruined. Oh, right, okay. Whose reference frames? You don't know what diffraction is. What? Yeah, your reference frames have been ruined, Dan, and you want to talk about diffraction? Your diffraction's hijacked perspective, clown, cats. And you want to talk about gravity? Your gas don't go down, go boom, boom, and you want to talk about my Patreon, Thunderfoot? You're all pathetic. You're the best you've got for the globe side's argument. And dancing around when all we do is parrot back the thing you've actually put to us. Put diffraction to us, we go, okay, diffraction, let's talk about it. Nah. Reference frames, ruined. Let's talk about it. Nah. Gas go down with gravity. Let's talk about that. Nah. What cowards?
They just want to fantasize all day long. And yeah, this actual argumentation back and forth is not really working out too well for them because they don't have any.
Yep.
We're going to need to see some rebuttals to these questions. They're questions that have been put to us, you appreciate. These are claims that have been put to us by all three of these individuals. You know, conspiracy cats, in terms of gas pressure, without a container. Without the container, there can be no pressure. These are things that are attributable to him. Now we're on to a different subject with cats. Quotes aside for gas pressure needing containment, as is claimed by him and validated by a description called the second law of thermodynamics, describing precisely that. But now we're on to diffraction. Well, okay, let's talk about diffraction then. You've brought it up. Flat Earth data says it's all optics. Correct. When you're studying an optically captured image, that would be a photograph, then you're talking about optics, not orthographic Muppet vision geometry with an aspect removed that gives things a difference in size at distance. They just use actual sizes, feet and meters, or... That's it. That's all they've got. Feet or meters. That doesn't change with distance. Yeah, they've hijacked perspective and it needs discussing. But no, of course, obfuscation tactics.
Geometry. But they gave that up, saying things like, oh, we've never seen the geometric horizon. Can't see it, only exists in the math. Well then, does it exist on Earth then? In reality? Yeah, okay. That's our whole point. Thanks.
Same goes for drift with the guy earlier. Like, you don't understand what Coriolis effect is. Your roundabout analogy, where you've got someone turning underneath something not attached with it seeming to drift because you're turning underneath the thing not attached to the roundabout, isn't comparable to Earth because Earth has got atmosphere travelling together with the Earth. And you go, well, that doesn't give you 15 degrees an hour drift then. And we get, what does drift mean? You're like, it's your claim. That's what you're claiming, drift. You should understand what it means. Nah, you're oversimplifying it, moving the goalposts. What, like Tyson claimed happened as Earth is claimed to turn underneath a football? Yeah, that's drift. But that would mean drones drift away from you 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, and that doesn't happen. So what's the response to that? Oh, I don't think you know what drift means. I don't know what drift means. I'm not claiming any. I think your reference frames are ruined. I don't have any. I'm not claiming any. You're the ones with reference frames and stuff drifting away from us that doesn't happen. You on the globe side with your ruined reference frames. Is that going to get addressed? Nah. Best talk about diffraction, right, Dan?
Nathan, how does one go about proving the atmosphere turns as one with the Earth?
It's not a claim from their side.
Atmosphere.
What they're claiming is that you launch a drone off a roundabout, right? And you're turning underneath the roundabout. But the drone moves around with the roundabout as you move on the roundabout. Even though the drone's hovering above it, it's still subject to the turn. In other words, no drift is what you're asking me. How can you achieve no drift? Well, they claim we do have drift. So how can we achieve this Earth and atmosphere travelling together? What, to give them no drift? There's supposed to be 15 degrees an hour of it, so I couldn't care less.
You know what, Nathan? I think I Oh, you probably figured this out long ago, but I'm right now figuring out this idea of the lockstep motion of air with the Earth. It's really based on the misconception that air has like momentum, while it only ever just moves because of pressure situations and never because of momentum, unlike objects and even liquids in containers and all that. They have momentum. But it's the idea that air too, just like bouncy balls, I guess, again, moves with the spin. That doesn't happen in reality because air doesn't really have momentum. It just settles however it can and it redistributes itself based on the pressure situation.
Within the system. So if you're in a car, the air's moving with the car in that closed system. Not perfectly closed, but closed nonetheless. So within that scenario, well, they claim Earth's an open system. So what, you're going to have the Earth travelling around in a little bubble like you in your car when you're moving around through the air? Protected from the outside movement of the air with the air inside moving with you? Well, number one, that's not an example that gives you drift, because drift is you throwing a ball out the window, and in fact it just drops to the ground on the spot it was dropped on the motorway, but you watch it curve away from you because you're travelling away from it. Well, that's two separate reference frames that they claim Earth has. So yes, you can have Earth moving with something, but that would require Earth to be a closed system. And it wouldn't give you drift.
Well, it's even a little bit worse than that, because when you move in a straight line, like the air in a car or in a plane or whatever, it moves in a straight line, right? Well, when you move in a circular path, then you get centripetal situations, and air is actually damn well subjected to that, at least. It does kind of like regradiate depending on centripetal force.
No, that's not right.
But it does it the opposite way. It does it to the outside. It gathers pressure to the outside. So,
No,
but the
not
way
true.
they say, no, it just moves just like as is with the Earth without any shift because of it, long-term shift of the pressure. No, that doesn't happen. That can't happen because Earth is not moving in a straight line. No, it's moving in circles.
Not moving at all, but yes, in their model.
Yeah, in the model. I mean, sorry.
I mean, I don't know what we can do. We're in a situation where we're in the minority. We get challenged by complete idiots. We respond to their challenge, and they give us a non sequitur back. It happens all the time. Now we've got three Joes. That would be Conspiracy Cats, Thunderfoot, and Simon Dan. That all need to be held to account. So how do we do that? How are we going to hold these clowns to account for their abject stupidity and nonsense?
You call them out. You call them out. That's what we've been doing. It's the only thing.
Yeah, but not even that works. They just send their trolls to try and defend the things for them.
Yeah, that's true. But hey, if somebody picks up on it, then they might take notice and then carry that with them for later. So that's all you really can do with like people that are so drug into their fantasy or are even professional scam artists, but then they would be in the know, right? Yeah, they constantly convolute things. So the only thing you can ever do is just point out what they're doing and then hope that people will take note of that. That's all you can do, really. Unless there's some legal things you can do about it, but
No.
That's not the case. So
I just want them to recognise their own wrongdoings. And don't get me wrong, Armin. By saying this and voicing this, I am actually in effect doing it.
Indeed. But that's because we were just asking, like, yeah, what do you do? Well, you're doing it. You're doing it right now. You're calling it out.
Indeed.
I don't want to try again for this place that they don't like.
Say again, Neil.
Neil.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I had to disconnect and come back in, so you got my conversation.
It's all good. Has anything transpired over the weekend? I did ask at the beginning of the show, during the housekeeping questions. Any interesting turns of events, videos released, things that need addressing?
Well, a U.S. election tomorrow. Crazy Tuesday. Woo.
No.
So
No.
that
Well, I got a buttered Craig from Fidelity wants to debate me because he's buttered. So at least I'm debating Wednesday. Conspiracy Cats also wants to debate me because I'm also giving him some buttered. But yeah.
Oh, you mean flat Earth related? No, it's been kind of quiet. I think. Oh, except the Globebuster. I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
Is that the current? I had no idea the election was tomorrow. I mean, I don't watch media. I couldn't care less.
No,
but there we
it's
go.
good for you, man. I'm glad. Must be very peaceful.
Yeah, it is. Same goes for the British lockdown. You know, my wife told me about it this morning when I was going out to a class. She's like, "You realise this will be the last of those classes?" I'm like, "Why?" It's like, "Well, there's a UK lockdown that's coming in on Thursday." I'm like, "Oh, nice that they can put a date on it. Isn't that handy?" Stupid. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But there we go. There's a date on it, apparently, and I didn't know about it, and that's typically the case. You know, I tend to be a lot happier not knowing. Ignorance is bliss.
I love that, Nathan. The virus knows to come in on a specific date. It just knows. It's a smart virus. Smart.
Yeah, it's invited to places. Gets invited to places.
Let's not get this
Some
right.
places,
Look,
It's a mental virus. It gets into people's heads, and then
stop. Right, look. Occasionally, magic tricks need to be recast. Right now, we're in a time where the magic spell's being recast for whatever reason. I don't care. Right, I just don't want to mess with that. If that's okay with you guys, I value my channel too much. Sorry. Not to kill the conversation stone dead. I was just hoping you'd say, yeah, Slice Barcane came out and said he'd got scientific validity for Earth Curve or whatever. That's what I was kind of aiming for, as opposed to...
Hey, Slice Barcane came out and had scientific validity for Earth Curve.
No, he didn't. He doesn't know what hypothesis is.
When's the last time anybody heard of Paul Voigt with the molten iron core? He's the only one that's ever addressed it, even as a baller.
Who's addressed molten iron core?
Wasn't it again like Paul Voigt or...
Paul Voigt! Wow, there's a blast from the past. Yeah, Paul Voigt claimed there was evidence of it. He just wasn't willing to actually give it up to Anthony, was he?
So nobody's heard of him ever since? Or...
I'm sure he's around. They just don't come here, do they? They'll say that there's a mute burn in effect, and therefore they couldn't possibly come and actually defend their nonsense.
Yep, and then they call us cowards because they don't stop.
Yeah, and with Nathan, they really just want revenge at this point. They just want to lure you out of your throne room here. It's very effective court, right? Drag you out of there to just like, oh, no, this is more fair. Let's come to this stupid little place so we can take revenge and now make you feel ashamed for no real reason. But we're just like, oh, we're so frustrated with you. Now this is how we feel. Oh. And you'll be like, okay, this is a complete waste of time because you still don't have any argument. You're just trying to shame me out of nowhere. And Nathan knows that. So that's why he doesn't do that anymore. Because
I thought it was quite comical, actually. Simon Dan put out a video of me debating with Conspiracy Cats on someone else's channel. So, you know, when it got to the point of talking about diffraction, and as I detailed earlier, takes a fairly significant time, excuse me, to detail the diffraction limit. Now, obviously, diffraction as a single word isn't going to encompass the description that incorporates a hijacking of something that we see in the form of perspective and the limitations of an aperture. I can only just summarize it in 10 seconds. So in the case of Conspiracy Cats, when he's got an opportunity on Anthony Riley's channel to talk over me and Fundy mute me about 6 or 7 times, at some point I just gave up. So that's what happened. Now from there they say, well, we've got a win. He's just given up. Clearly he doesn't know what diffraction is. So then when he gets to me on my channel, of course, saying, yeah, I do know what diffraction is, I've had half a dozen to a dozen guests discussing diffraction and how it relates directly to this subject. So I then labour how that is relevant to the subject matter. Does it get a response? No! Of course it doesn't get a response. Why? Well, because it's not a lowbrow ad hom anymore. No, it's suddenly a debating subject. Suddenly, diffraction is actually the hijacking of the horizon as a physical location. That's part and parcel of your claim that Earth's a sphere. So diffraction's critical to this subject. Let's discuss it. Anyone hear the crickets?
Oh no, nothing really is level. Get out of
Yeah.
here. Ah.
I'll just tell you what Conspiracy Cat said to me. No, you don't understand diffraction. It has nothing to do with distance and angles.
So what does it have to do with then?
So it's an
And
optical
at the same-
limitation. No, let's not get into an argument about what diffraction is or isn't. So there's a limitation based on aperture. And the photos used to claim sphere proof are definitely optical in nature. So they're definitely subject to this optical limitation then. Why isn't it in the maths? I'll tell you why it's not in the maths. Because they've removed all aspects of perspective, even though they're absolutely in effect every time you photograph anything ever. And they've called those effects Earth curve.
No, you see, the reason they don't like it, Nathan, is because we can prove, we're using the Rayleigh criterion, that the larger object of the ground is going to diffract over the smaller object in the distance. They don't like that because then they say it's not Earth curve.
Yeah, we've destroyed radius. They've no longer got a physical geometric sphere edge horizon. When they were claiming they had got a physical geometric sphere edge horizon based on the radius we've debunked with the black swan, they used to say that physical obstruction blocked things in the distance. Now, those things in the distance were given a feet and inches or meters value that didn't change with distance, even though instinctively everybody watching knows that as you get further away from something, it gets smaller. Not in actual size, but in angular size. An optical limitation. Well, these things are ignored because they have taken these effects and called them Earth curve. It's just that simple. Shout out to the Flat Earth Fellow for the super chat. Send some sunglasses and also Unicorn Laser Eyes. Let's bring it by the screen and read out his super chat. Bear with me 1 second. Heard a great one-liner the other day. I got glow proof. Ha 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 ha. Thank you for the super chat, Unicorn Laser Eyes. Really appreciate it.
Nice. Yeah, it's a reoccurring joke. We hear it a lot, don't we? There's just no punchline there. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's all contained.
The punchline being the argument, though. That's why. Just people say it's a globe. It's all the proof. And then what is it? Let's think back, because I hadn't actually thought about it before I said that. Because people just say that, right? Right? That's normal. Okay. Globe proof. Wait, there were some mathematical things. Is that proof? Stars? Like they even bring it forth like a question sometimes. Because people that just assume it's a globe, they say it before they think about it because that's normal, right?
Yeah, but they make the claim. They make the claim and want us to figure out their claim for them.
No, but that's what the trenchers do over here. I'm talking more general. People, normies.
Oh yeah, normies. Yeah, no, they don't think. They're just because they're indoctrinated
Of course,
by it.
it's a
Just
globe,
comes out, yeah.
right? Right?
Well,
It just
it's a
has to be.
It's a conditioned response without thought.
Well said.
So back to what you were just saying, Nathan. Smaller in size due to angular size, but not actual size. How is this not picked up by anybody? It's in every picture. You can go anywhere with a trench glober next to you, and it's right there, but they deny perspective.
Yeah, they used to say it's not needing perspective because it's geometry. You're just working out the physical size and shape based on geometry. So orthographic view, actual sizes only, you don't need it. But that claim we haven't heard uttered since 1st Jan 2020. Why? Well, because saying it's just geometric. Oh, right. Where'd you get your geometric value of R from? Well, from the same exact thing we claim blocks, boats and buildings, a physical horizon that we measure the R from. Well, we've debunked it. So you can't use the excuse that, well, the reason we don't take any of these optical limitations into effect is because it's geometric. Is it? So you've got a geometric tangent point for a horizon then? No, you haven't. We've debunked that. Quote, it only exists in the maths. We wouldn't expect to see a geometric horizon. And on and on and on. So no, it's not because it's geometric, because you don't have a geometric horizon. So your claim that things are blocked by a geometric horizon and you don't need optics because it's geometry is absolutely blown out of the water by the black swan.
Yep.
This has been a great show.
And terrestrial refraction can't save them either. It really used to be the first go-to, you know, when we would address that. Remember that?
Yeah, just say it on one word. Refraction.
Paradox.
Why can't that save them?
Because it's based on R. It's based on a geometric value. If it's just Earth curve maths geometry, well, that needs a tangent point. The horizon being that tangent point, as they claim it blocks stuff with its physicality. Well, their refraction is a mathematical 7/6R in standard form. Standard refraction, otherwise known as terrestrial refraction, bends light at the rate of R. Well, you need R, and they can't get it. So you can't move the horizon with R if you can't measure R.
Yeah, you can't say which
What a
came
shame.
first.
Oh, I'm going to have to mute you all so I can read out this from Flat Earth Data. 1.22 times 0.00005/0.005 equals 0.000122 times 57.30 equals 0.0069. This is the maximum resolution of the human eye. 3 miles slash tangent of 0.0069 equals 24911 miles, the size of Earth, from the maximum angular limit of the eye. What a coincidence. Not a coincidence at all, Flat Earth Data. Thank you very much for the $27.99 super chat. Really, really appreciate it. But more appreciative of your sentiments. Oh yes, what a coincidence. There's that 1.22 number again. I wonder why. Yeah, because they've taken the effect of perspective and they've called it Earth curve. They've taken the angular resolution limit of your eye, and where it would put a diffraction limit, that would be the horizon, and said that that's where Earth curve sits. 3 miles for a 6-foot man. That's correct. They've hijacked perspective and called it Earth curve. And what's this that they've used to do it? Diffraction. Well, what's the best defence? Call Nathan out for not knowing what diffraction is, even though our maths has hijacked the effect of diffraction and called it Earth curve. Thank you very much again for the super chat, Flat Earth Day. That was epic.
Yep, all just optical.
Well,
Exactly.
what they used, they basically replaced the real life thing, but what they actually used to do it every single time is math. Most of their works is mathematics wizardry. Reification of a mathematical structure that works kind of out with what they got data-wise, and it's there to reify the conception and the twisting into reality so that people believe it.
So was QE setting them up with that terrestrial refraction? He always knew, and he
Yes.
was setting them up for it?
Yes, there's a funny story behind that I'll tell you about in the after show. So with that, I will say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Primary streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!